About 2 years ago, something happened that only recently came to a conclusion, or so it seems, and I'd like to share it here. I apologize in advance because this might get lengthy, but this is the only time I, someone with zero spiritual sensitivity, have ever experienced anything supernatural. There's a certain spot in a town in F City, Hiroshima Prefecture, everyone local knows about it. It's called the Talisman House, and as the name suggests, it's a house covered in countless offuta, talisman papers. Unlike other rumored haunted places, practically everyone from my university who's visited this spot has had a strange experience. Apparently, even people who aren't spiritually sensitive can see things there. A friend once told me a story. Only around the house, for some reason, there was this really thick fog. And so, half-jokingly, I threw some salt into the fog, and all of a sudden it parted in a big whoosh. It was so freaky that I ran for my life. They say it's a place that attracts an enormous number of spirits, and according to those with the ability to see them, you can see loads of spirits swarming around outside, kept from entering the house by the wards. My friend's comment left such a strong impression that I still remember it clearly. He said even people without spiritual sensitivity could see something there, which sounded incredibly appealing to me, someone who has no sixth sense. One day, while having a meal at a family restaurant, I brought up the subject of the Talisman House. A senior friend of mine, his girlfriend, and my buddy S were with me. They got ridiculously excited, saying, "Let's go right now." Apparently, the senior and his girlfriend had visited that place during high school, but they got too scared to get out of the car. My buddy S, who was from another prefecture, was especially eager. Right after I mentioned it, I started feeling a bit uneasy and regretted bringing it up, but it was too late. I'm telling you, that place is seriously dangerous. Some guys got sick for a week after going there, some had accidents on the way home. That's pretty common, you know? S, what are you getting so scared of now? I've got spiritual senses. I've been seeing ghosts since I was a kid, so if I really want to, I can make him cry uncle. I remember thinking this guy was a total idiot, but he said that if there really was any dangerous spirit, he'd warn me first so I could run, and since he's usually fearless and strong-willed, I ended up agreeing to go along to see the Talisman House. It was around 11 p.m. or so. Maybe a bit early for visiting a haunted place, but the forest road leading to the Talisman House had an oppressive darkness, and just being there gave off a strong atmosphere. We got out of the car, messing around, saying things like, "Wow, maybe we really shouldn't do this?" But the senior and his girlfriend stayed in the car. Hey, what's up with you two? Senior, my girlfriend, she's not feeling well, so I'm staying with her. S, no way. Since we're already here, let's at least take a look. Senior, no, I'm good. You two go on ahead. S, what are you so scared of? Ghosts are my specialty. Senior, shut up, you idiot. R doesn't feel well. Quit acting tough. They nearly started fighting, so I hurriedly stepped in to calm them down. In the end, S and I had to go just the two of us. S, seriously, what's their problem? Bet they're planning to get it on in the car while we're gone. Not a chance in a place like this. Besides, you're being way too cocky toward the senior. S, let's bang on their window and scare them when we get back. I was too dumbfounded to say anything, but suddenly we came across a barricade, which startled me, so I stopped in my tracks. S, so this is where it really starts, huh? It said something like beyond this point is municipal property, no trespassing. It was heavily fortified with barbed wire. We couldn't climb over it, so we had to veer off into the woods a bit until we found where the barbed wire ended, climb over there, then get back onto the road and continue forward. Looking back now, I'm not entirely sure if I felt a sudden chill the moment we crossed that barricade or if I just imagined it. But I definitely sensed a change in the air. I was tense and walked in silence, but S was on the lookout all around us, saying things like, "Whoa, there's one right there. Oh. And over there, too." He was still acting all excited. By the way, there's said to be a dummy house before you reach the real Talisman House. I'd heard this beforehand. A classmate explained. You see, when you follow the forest road, you first come across a white house. But that's actually just a normal abandoned house. Next to it, there's this uphill path, a kind of animal trail, and if you don't climb that, you won't reach the real Talisman House. Some people mistake that first abandoned house for the Talisman House and just go home, you know? And sure enough, we found that dummy house. Since S already knew about it, neither of us panicked, we just headed for the trail next to the house. That's when S said, "Hey, "Hang on a second, let me light a smoke," and stopped walking. He was having a hard time getting his lighter to work. I was standing around, staring at the White House, thinking, this place itself has quite an atmosphere. And absent-mindedly moved closer to the house. For some reason, the normal-looking house was also chained off around its perimeter. I didn't think much of it and was about to duck under the chain when my name S called out to me. Startled, I turned around to see him wide-eyed, cigarette dangling from his mouth, looking straight in my direction. At first, I couldn't understand what was going on, but I quickly realized S wasn't looking at me, he was looking behind me. That made my entire body break out in goosebumps. I felt a chill run down my spine like never before in my life. I wanted to run straight for S, but my legs wouldn't move, and I was paralyzed with panic. Then, as if sensing my predicament, S suddenly let out a roar. Whoa! He let out this insanely loud yell and bolted back the way we came. His shout helped snap me out of my stupor, and I took off at a dead run too. The forest road felt way longer than before, and a crushing sense of dread came over me, but I distinctly remember a thought flashing through my mind. This must be exactly the kind of situation where they say, don't look back. Finally, we made it out of the forest road and burst onto the main road, scrambling into the car at top speed. When we jumped into the car, the senior immediately sensed something was off. "Senior, what happened? You two look freaked out." I was shaking so badly I couldn't form a coherent answer. All I could say was, "Please, just drive away from here. I'm begging you. I'm sorry. Please." My only thought was getting away from that place as quickly as possible. Realizing how terrified I was, the senior didn't tease me. He just floored it, and the car sped off. For a while, no one spoke. All I could hear was his girlfriend quietly sobbing. Suddenly, I felt someone smack me hard on the back, bang, bang. Startled, I looked to the side to see S grinning from ear to ear. "S, hope you had fun." And that's when I understood everything. Honestly, I wanted to knock S out right then and there, but more than anger, I just felt relieved and liberated, and all my strength drained out of me. The senior must have caught on too. He shot a glare at S through the rearview mirror and simply said, "S, you jerk." Under his breath. "This guy is the worst. I'm never going to another haunted place with him again." At the same time, I couldn't help thinking, but thank goodness it was all a joke. The senior seemed to feel the same. He's usually quick to anger, but this time he didn't scold S too harshly. He just focused on comforting his girlfriend. Once the mood in the car calmed down, it brightened considerably. S started reenacting the scene for laughs, and by the time we got back to town, everyone was acting cheerful again. We pulled up to a convenience store, and the senior said, "Let's grab some drinks." Just as dawn. A loud thump came from the roof of the car, and the whole vehicle shook. Startled, the senior slammed on the brakes, and the car behind us started blaring its horn. "Senior, what the heck was that?" The girlfriend, "Let's just pull into the convenience store. We're blocking traffic." I had no idea what had happened either, maybe a bird or something? But it didn't make sense. While I was still trying to figure it out, we pulled into the store. We jumped out to check the roof, no dents or anything. Even shining a phone's light on it showed no scratches. "Senior, that's strange. Something definitely hit us, right? You all heard it, right?" We were all at a loss. We walked around, checking the car and the nearby road, but found nothing. That's when I noticed S hadn't gotten out of the car. I went back to the car and asked, "Hey, what's up?" No answer. He was slumped forward, trembling slightly. A sense of dread washed over me. I shook him roughly by the shoulder and yelled, "Hey! What's wrong with you?" In a scratchy, hoarse voice, S said, "Something's followed me." That single sentence made me feel like I'd lost my grip on reality. "What do you mean, something's followed you? Wasn't all of that a lie?" S looked pale and was shaking. The senior's girlfriend burst into tears. We decided to calm down a bit, so we bought him a hot drink in the convenience store and coaxed him into talking. That place was bad news from the start. Remember the barricade? The reason I led us off into the woods to get around it wasn't really because of the barbed wire. It was because there was someone standing right on the other side of that barricade. I knew you couldn't see it, so I didn't say anything. But how lame would it sound to say, "Let's not go because there's a ghost behind the barricade"? Once we got past it, yeah, there were spirits all over the place, some in the woods, some on the road. But they didn't seem interested in us, so I managed to keep calm on the surface. Then we got to the dummy house, and there really weren't any ghosts there. I finally felt relieved enough to light up a smoke. But while I was trying to light it, you wandered off. When I glanced your way, I saw her. A woman with long hair. She was looking down at you as you were about to duck under the chain. I called out your name and tried to run, but it was too late. By the time you turned around, she was clinging to your back. We returned to S's apartment that night, but neither of us touched the alcohol we had bought earlier. We went straight to bed. I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep out of fear, but strangely enough, I lost consciousness almost immediately. The next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by a horrible sound coming from the bathroom. Gah. Gah. It was the sound of someone vomiting. I rushed to the bathroom and found S hunched over the toilet, retching violently. S. Are you okay? Hang in there, S. I grabbed his back and rubbed it frantically. But when I looked inside the toilet, my blood ran cold. S was vomiting blood. Panic surged through me. I felt my consciousness teetering on the edge, but I forced myself to stay alert. I grabbed S and started slapping his back with all my strength. You bastard. Don't screw with me. Stay with me, you idiot. I kept shouting, tears streaming down my face as I smacked his back over and over. The dim nightlight in the room flickered eerily, even though there was no wind. I remember that sight so clearly. I had no idea how much time had passed, but the ambulance finally arrived. S had lost consciousness, but even as they carried him away, he was gripping my clothes and wouldn't let go. At the hospital, after S was stabilized, the doctor spoke to me. His vocal cords are severely damaged. Apparently, it wasn't just from screaming. There was no way simple shouting could have caused that level of damage. The doctor pressed me for an explanation, but I couldn't answer. S was transferred to another hospital the next day. I visited him every day, but because of his throat injury, he couldn't speak. We had to communicate by writing, but our conversations were shallow and painful. Of course, I couldn't bring myself to ask about that night. Time passed like that, and then, just before he was supposed to be discharged, I went to visit him, only to find his hospital room empty. Oh, he was discharged yesterday. That's what the nurse told me. At least let me know, damn it. Annoyed, I sent him a congratulatory text. But the message bounced back. His email was no longer in service. I had a really bad feeling. I quickly tried calling him, but the number had been changed. With no other way to reach him, I could only wait for him to come back to university. But he never did. My bad feeling turned out to be right. S had dropped out of school. I asked the administration office for his family's contact information, but they wouldn't give it to me. Just like that, I lost all contact with S. For the next 2 years, while I was still in university, I never saw him again. Afterward, Kododama, the power of words. I'm sorry for the delay. This is 215. Since I have time, I'll continue writing. The reason I finally reconnected with S was through a younger student in my university club. It turned out he was from the same town as S. With his help, I arranged a visit to S's hometown 2 weekends ago. This junior had known S since middle school and even knew where his house was. I felt a little guilty for showing up unannounced, but I had been worried about S for years and couldn't just let it go. So, I went to visit his home. When I arrived, his mother greeted me. She was a small, cheerful woman with an energetic demeanor. I explained the situation, and she was surprised but quickly called for S. S came to the front door. His hair was completely shaved. He looked shocked to see me but managed a small, awkward smile. "Yo," he said, his voice carrying an uncomfortable tone. Seeing him standing there, alive and well, nearly brought me to tears. His family invited me in, and we sat down to talk. Our conversation was stiff and formal at first, but eventually, S began to open up. What follows is a summary of what he told me. S never went to sleep that night. Or rather, he refused to sleep. He had made up his mind, he would not let his guard down. But in the middle of the night, as the air grew cold, he decided to grab a blanket from the closet. When he opened the closet door, she was there. That woman. Before he could react, she merged with him. After that, his memory became fragmented. The next thing he knew, he was vomiting. He wasn't trying to vomit, it was an instinctive rejection, as if his body was desperately trying to expel something unnatural. But all that came out was blood. I seriously thought I was going to die right there. He didn't even remember me calling his name or rubbing his back. The doctor told us that his case was outside their field. His vocal cords have completely healed, yet he still couldn't speak. The issue wasn't physical, it was mental. A psychological scar. In other words, the hospital had no way to treat him. S's mother encouraged him to stay in treatment while continuing his studies, but S insisted. "I'm dropping out and going home." He refused to change his mind, no matter what anyone said. His parents eventually came to pick him up, and he returned to his hometown. I was half out of my mind back then. But I just knew there was no way a hospital could fix this. Ever since that night, S had recurring nightmares. On top of that, he had started sleepwalking, something he had never done before. Before things got any worse, he wanted to go to a shrine or temple for an exorcism and live quietly in the countryside. He cut contact with everyone simply because he didn't want them to worry. But in reality, I think he just wanted to erase everything about that night from his life. Before returning home, S told his parents everything. They took him to a large temple in their town. As soon as they arrived, the head monk led S straight into the main hall. "Speak openly about everything that happened." S tried to write everything down since he still couldn't talk. But halfway through writing, his hand froze. His breathing stopped. It was the first time he had ever experienced a waking paralysis strong enough to suffocate him. Realizing the danger, the monks immediately began the exorcism. S heard the sound of footsteps rushing around, chanting, and metallic clanging, but then everything went black. The next thing he knew, he was lying in a futon inside the temple's guest room. The head monk sat beside him. That spirit was exceptionally strong. It had already taken root inside you. If you had waited any longer, it might have been too late. Then, the monk showed him something. It was a small wooden statue of a Buddha. "We use this. It was a substitute, a vessel to absorb the spirit. It was a simple carving, but to us, it looked incredibly divine." The monk explained. Spirits take away the power of words. That's how they gain control over a host. Kododama, the power of words, has a deep connection to spirits. Even though the exorcism was complete, S still couldn't speak. His parents were deeply worried, but the monk reassured them. "He'll be fine now. Give it a few days. Once he recovers physically, his voice will return." And sure enough, about a week later, S gradually started speaking again. After that, he took time to rest and eventually found a job through a staffing agency. Since then, he's been completely fine. This was the only real ghost experience I've ever had. After the exorcism, S never saw another spirit again. It seems the wooden statue sealed away both the spirit and his spiritual sensitivity. Looking back, I realize now. We shouldn't mess with things we don't understand. I won't ever go near a place like that again. And neither should you.